This is Power Lunch with Pabi Moloi on Power 98.7.
Yeah, now indeed we are talking. It is Power Lunch on Power 98.7. You know, yesterday we spoke about what's happening in Cape Town, and the crews are still battling the Chapman's Peak blaze, despite the colder temperatures and windless conditions that have brought reprieve to the ongoing blaze at Tokai. Fire crews are concerned that the fire lines now are threatening Chapman's Peak. So several road closures remain in place, and the City of Cape Town's Fire and Rescue Services spokesperson said donations are currently closed because the frontline workers have enough provisions to sustain the teams. That's amazing. And although the fire has not been contained, the various fire services have made significant progress in subduing the blaze that started on Friday. And so, yeah, if you are listening to Power 98.7 from the Cape Town region, you can send photos, you can send, info on what's going on as well. I know that the fynbos and the agriculture that's on the mountain is just to be protected, and these fires are incredibly disruptive. We were also talking about the potential arsonist who was arrested and the allegations against them. Let's move on to our next story now. A tragic turn has happened in the Hennops River case. Is there more to this story? So I suppose it's turned into the Hennops River case, right? Chad Thomas, who's the Organised Crime Investigator at IRS Forensic Investigations. Hello to you.
Hi, Pabi.
Yeah, so it's turned into the Hennops River case because it's essentially, initially it was about the constables who were last seen on Thursday morning, but more has happened since.
Yeah, it's become a very defining case in our history when it comes to law enforcement, search and rescue, etc. There's been so much that the story's given us in respect to the way the police have conducted themselves, the way they've been able to bring closure to the families, but also the time lapse that it took to get to this point. And I think for me, the biggest troubling aspect is the fact that other vehicles and other bodies were found. And this leads us to think to ourselves, well, what's actually happening out there? How many bodies have been left undiscovered? How many vehicles are still lying in rivers, ravines, wherever the case may be? Because we do have a massive problem with cold cases when it comes to missing people in South Africa.
Absolutely, because I believe what's happened is, unfortunately and very tragically, the police officers have been found, but then another person's been found who has nothing necessarily to do with this case, but it does now seem to be a Hennops River issue. Is this the dumping ground when crime happens?
Well, we don't know, and I wouldn't want to speculate, but There's also the body of a SAPS employee that was found who went missing over the weekend, as well as another vehicle. And then we were told that a fifth body had been found that was decomposing. So 5 bodies, one stretch of river, multiple vehicles. It just doesn't bode well for the state of investigation in South Africa. If you come across one crime scene and then suddenly there's another scene and suddenly another scene.
I do understand what you're saying. Okay, so the VW Polo, let's talk about that. It's not yet been recovered. I've been listening to people talking about how that is one of the most hijacked cars in South Africa. So perhaps this is just straight crime. But of course, there's also the question mark around what may be happening internally because of their position in the South African police services. In a river search like this, how difficult is it to locate a submerged vehicle? Is that even what the search and rescue operation think has happened?
Look, our rivers aren't that deep in Gauteng, but we have had a lot of rain the last couple of weeks. We have seen rivers in flood, and the levels have raised in some instances above the flood line. It's telling that other vehicles were found, that the person who went missing over the weekend, his vehicle was found. It's concerning that this particular vehicle hasn't been found as yet, and I'm assuming that the police are now following the full trail of the river as well as the flood plain. They're using helicopters, they're using ground forces, they're also using drones. But the point you raised about this being a vehicle that gets kidnapped, rather stolen or hijacked, yes, it is a vehicle that gets stolen on a regular basis and hijacked on a regular basis. But again, the police haven't indicated that there was foul play in respect to the three bodies. So we're going to have to wait for the post-mortem to come out, see if how the people passed away. Was it drowning? Was it blunt force trauma? Is there evidence of foul play? Before we can extend the investigation to say, okay, fine, this may in fact have been a hijacking. It may in fact been a murder. Right now, I think the working hypothesis is that this was a tragic accident and that they died when the vehicle went over the bridge. But with all these unanswered questions, there's going to be so much speculation, so much rumor, that we really need to bring this to conclusion.
Absolutely, we do. Do you think there's a possibility of more bodies discovered around Hennops River?
I think in a lot of our rivers, we've got people that live so close to the floodline due to economic circumstances. We've got a lot of undocumented people that have come into South Africa that live along the Yixkay, live along the Brompton-Saint-Spruit, live along the Hennops. We've been having excessive rain in Gauteng. There's a lot of people that are missing. If you're undocumented and you're in this country without family, you may not even be reported as missing. So we really need to up the proactiveness of our search and rescue, that when there are rains, you don't react and go look because somebody's been missing, but patrol our rivers, check our dams. Because what we found out over the last couple of days is that there's bodies lying there that may have gone undiscovered for a long length of time. Yeah. Perhaps never discovered if it wasn't for the fact that they were searching for these three police officers.
Absolutely. And that presents a lot of worries, right? I mean, there isn't enough manpower necessarily. And if somebody is not reported missing, why would you? But should there be regular sweeps of our rivers?
Most definitely. Yeah. You're going to find hidden contraband. You may even find suspects or fugitives, and you're going to find undocumented individuals. You may find it as a dumping ground for bodies. We have a lot of serial killers operating in South Africa, which is the unfortunate truth. We do need to be proactive. We do need to look at our rivers. We need to look at our dams. We need to look in rural areas. We can't just be a reactive police force. We can't be reactive when it comes to safety and security of the citizenry of this land.
All right, let's speak next about the wide SAPS search. I mean, it was all the way from Gauteng to Limpopo. Does this case suggest, yes, it suggests interprovincial coordination, but can you talk to me about how well SAPS is doing with interprovincial coordination?
So yes, you make a very valid point. It was spread across three provinces, the Free State, Gauteng and Limpopo.
Right.
They established an operational command center. You must remember SAPS is a national police force. It's not like our metropolitan police forces, which are local, or our provincial traffic departments, which are provincial. So they do have a national command center. They do have a national structure, and they can come together cross-border to be able to undertake such operations. I think the involvement of the private sector as well as your provincial and local traffic authorities went a long way in assisting with the search. So I think they did everything that was right in terms of establishing a special command center specifically for this case and bringing in other specialists and expert role players to assist in this particular search.
And lastly, there has been a public discussion about how quickly SAPS reacted for one of their own, so to speak, right? So these were 4 officers of their own, and they went missing, and SAPS kind of got into action very quickly. And for many of those who are not members of the South African Police Services, they really feel that there's not much urgency in rescuing or looking at missing civilians cases. What would you say to that?
Look, I think the perception would be right. The police do look after their own. We talk about the thin blue line. And it's you can commend the police for looking after their own and coming out in droves to search for their own members. But you are 100% correct. The citizens are going to say, but what about us? And we get told to report somebody after 48 hours. That's not the case. If somebody disappears under suspicious circumstances, there's no waiting period. Are they going to see a rollout like we saw with this? Not necessarily, unless it's somebody high profile. The anti-kidnapping task team, which was set up by crime intelligence, has been working exceptionally well in terms of high-profile kidnappings that are reported to them. But we still have the problem of express kidnappings. We still have the problem of kidnapping copycat syndicates that are operating in informal settlements, etc. So it depends on where you sit in society in terms of what crime search you're going to get. And that's very disappointing. We need to see the police replicating units like we've seen in crime intelligence with the anti-kidnapping task team that specializes in these high-profile cases. And there has to be one policing standard across the board. We're all citizens, we're all vulnerable, and we all need to be treated the same.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your contribution to this conversation. I'm not sure if you're aware of the journalist who is also missing with his wife. Do you think they could be linked, or do we have any more information about that?
Such a sad case. And the South African Press Association, together with all the members, have been trying their utmost. I know that they brought in Calvin Rafadi as an independent investigator to try help them with guidance, etc. Very sad situation that this couple are missing, that there's been no activity on their bank accounts, no activity on their cell phones. I fear the worst for them. And we do need to ensure that we get closure for their families as well, because this is now stretching. I think we're going into the second or third month, and it's a deplorable situation.
It really is a deplorable situation. We'll keep an eye on that. Organised crime investigator at IRS Forensic Investigations. Chad Thomas, thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much for the invitation.